So this is a really deep idea because, in fact, what's remarkable is that any periodic signal can be decomposed into a sum of harmonics with different amplitudes. Okay, let me just kind of back this up again. So basically, this orange curve, what do we know about this orange curve? We know that if you just looked at it, it's not obvious, but in fact, you can write it as a sum of the first and second harmonics. You have to scale the first one by 3 and the second one by -2. So we're decomposing it into individual harmonics. Okay, and so then that begs the question if any function can be decomposed in this way. Right? If you give me any periodic function, can I always write it as a particular sum of the harmonics? And in fact, this is true. And this is what is known as a Fourier series. So what a Fourier series is it takes some periodic function and then it breaks it down into an interference of the individual harmonics. Okay, so here's an example of this. This is taken from the book. So this is a square wave. Okay, so this is about as boring of a periodic function as you can get. It's flat, drops down, right? So this is just going to go on forever. Okay, and so now what the Fourier series theorem says is that in fact we can think of this as actually being an interference pattern of different sinusoidal functions. And so here it is. If you look over here, I've graphed 3 functions: sine pi t, sine 3 pi t, and sine 5 pi t. So this is 3 times the fundamental frequency, 5 times the fundamental frequency. So the first one is the blue curve. The second one is the orange curve, right? That has 3 times the frequency, and then 5 times the frequency is the green one. See, it's going fast, exactly. Okay, so now look what happens. So now if we add these functions, if we associate some weight with them, so I multiply the first one, the amplitude, by 1, the second one by 1/3, and the third one by 1/5, we get this resulting wave. Right? And it's fantastic, actually, that something that looks nothing like a sine wave can actually be made approximately by taking combinations of sine waves. Now here we just took 3 harmonics, but what the Fourier series does is it would actually take an infinite number of harmonics. And so the idea is that we would add more. So we go F4, F5, we'd add more and more, and mathematically this is what you do, and you get something that approaches the shape of the square wave more and more. Okay, any questions on this?
Are you able to go back to, I have a question.
Yeah.
Go back, that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you know how we talked about when you change the amplitude, so 1 is 3 times and 1 is a minus, because
Yeah.
the A is a negative, like a -1, but it's -2.
Yes.
When we flipped, did we, because usually like when you flip it's over the X, or then you flip over Y.
This is over the X.
Thank you.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
All right, so now the fact that we can write a periodic function in terms of these harmonics allows us to interpret a signal in a different way. And this is the idea of a frequency domain. So the idea is that what we'll do is we'll take our signal and we'll store it as a collection of sinusoids. Okay? And this is the basic idea of data compression. And we're going to get to the lab here to where you'll see this. So the idea is that instead of storing the amplitude of the signal at each moment in time, we store the amplitude of the harmonics constituting the signal. Okay? So let that kind of sink in. Instead of storing the amplitude of the signal at each moment in time, we store the amplitude of the harmonic constituting the signal. So to go back to our sine wave, so instead, imagine if you were to try to describe to someone the sine wave function. Okay? So one way you could do it, and this would be an inefficient way, but you could write down at every single moment in time, you could write down the value of the signal. Right? That would be a huge list. A more efficient way would be if you just wrote down the coefficients 1, 1/3, and 1/5. Right? With 3 numbers. Now this is not exactly the square wave, right? It's something that looks similar to it. But with 3 numbers, we're able to approximate this function pretty well, right? And we'd have more numbers. The more harmonics we add, the more we'd have to add to the list.
But either 1, 3, and 5 also, or no?
No. So once you define your fundamental frequency, then you're good. Just the amplitudes.
could see this working for sound, but will this also work for like pictures?
It will. Yep. Yeah.
'Cause what's the sine waves for a picture?
Well, so it would just be, I mean, formally all you're doing is you're just changing from t to, let's just say x or y. Okay? Okay. And so then the idea is that we express the amplitude of the harmonic with frequency omega as a function. Okay, so what this function g omega is doing is for every harmonic frequency omega, it's going to give you the amplitude. And this is called the Fourier transform of the signal. Okay, so to our sine wave example, so here's the Fourier transform. It's actually a very boring function because remember, all we needed were 3 points. We just needed 1, 1/3, and 1/5. This is what's known as a discrete function here because we just have a discrete number of frequencies. So basically what you do is you look up your frequency on the x-axis, and then on the y-axis here, that's the associated amplitude. So here the frequency is pi, right? So 1 pi, so I go here. What's the coefficient there? It's 1. So I put a check mark there. Here it's 3 pi. What's the frequency? 1/3. So I go to 3. It's 1/3. Right? This is just the Fourier transform of that. So for periodic functions, its Fourier transform is discrete. Again, discrete means that these lines aren't connected. They're just dots. Right? Because I just have a discrete number of terms here in the series. However, for aperiodic functions, we can also define a Fourier transform. Right? And it's the same thing. It's just a function of omega. But now this is a continuous function. Okay, so for periodic functions, your Fourier transform is discrete. For aperiodic functions, your Fourier transform is a continuous function in frequency. So here's an example. And
frequency players make a little bit more sense. So this is showing the Fourier transform of this time domain signal. And you can see that the signal consists of one signal with an amplitude of negative 1.6 decibels and one with negative 1.49 decibels at these two different frequencies. Some of the other modules, it's going to record my voice. So this is what talking sounds like. There's a lot of bursty action in the time domain. And then this is what it looks like in the frequency domain. This is on a log scale. So if I were to sing, and I'm a lousy singer, but let's say I sing, you can see the harmonics that I've generated in my singing. And you can see some of the periodic structure. Since I'm not a great singer, I have tuning forks. So I have these different length tuning forks. So I'm going to play one that's at 4096 hertz. So this is a C signal at 4096. So you can see in the frequency domain, there's a peak somewhere around here. And then now this one is at 2048. So this one's at half the frequency, so it's over here somewhere. And then I have another tuning fork that's 1024. So that's there. So those are the signals that I can generate. And definitely you can try it to sing into the microphone or to talk and see what does your voice sound like. And then the last module that we have.
very good.
This would be an interesting project to do with students based on their voices and their pitches, right? And then see when they talk certain ways, if people listen to them more.
Yep. That's true.
That was going to be harder to
Or how well they're screaming at the
on the show, right? Yeah.
The person who's next to them, you know, like they're screaming.
So I'm going to try something.
There you go.
I think I capture the same thing.
Well, does the same